Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is your host,
Nico.
and Irvin, and today we're trying something a little bit new. It's not a standing spotlight, but we're going to do a little bit of a discussion. You've been a part of the comic and manga community any amount of time professionally that you've probably heard creatives at some point or another talk about the dynamics between artist and writer. Which is more important to the creative process, or what is something that you value a little bit more when it comes to the process. So today we're going to actually talk to the pros about this topic of the artist versus the writer in comics. Before we get started, though, make sure you give us a shiny like and also subscribe and hit the bell if you like these kind of videos. But anyway, let's start with the introductions.
Okay. Today we have the Ro Higashi of the Half of the Crown, Jamie Lynn Lano, assistant of Prince of Tennis and the creator of Princess of Tennis, Jeff Lilly with as the co-creator of the Extras and partner with Mark Dudley, the creator of Judafist, and they are both some of the heads of the
Imaginos Workshop.
Imaginos Workshop.
Yes.
If Ro, if you will, you tell the audience a bit more about yourself.
So I'm Filipino American. I did live in Japan for about 3 years, and I went to manga school there. And then I came back to the States to kind of raise my kids in a more multicultural environment. And yes, I draw and write and draw Half of the Crown on Webtoon Canvas.
You should see that right here on the screen, right here.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Jeff, yourself?
Well, me. Name is Jeff Lilly. Let's see. I'm a writer, and my current big project is writing a webcomic called The Extras with my partners Pam Bliss and Katie Hodges. I'm also an editor, and I edit basically anything that comes through Imaginos Workshop. I get to hack and slash and mark up with my red pen. So, and people are really, really frightened about this for some reason, but I'm actually very nice.
Mark,
I'll have a few slashes.
I'm Mark Dudley. I'm a partner in the Imaginos Workshop with Jeff, Irvin, and Nico. We got a bunch of other partners, probably about 12 more. We screenwrite, we write and we draw comics. We're getting into Trolley Rally TV. We got a production company. So in that production company, I write and draw Afrofuturistic web comic called Judafist 7 Deaths of the Yoke.
And Jamie, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Jamie. Once upon a time, I spent a few years working on the manga The Prince of Tennis under Konomi Takeshi Sensei. Since then, I lived in Japan for a long time, and then since then, I've been working on my own comic in the background, but it's not probably going to come out until later this year, I think. And I've spent a lot of my time recently working on a subscription book box, so that's been a lot of fun. I do all the art direction for that, so.
Very cool. Can I just ask a question here to both Ro and Jamie? So what part of Japan did you live in?
So I was in Nagoya, like downtown Nagoya area.
Cool.
Yep. And I went
my old stomping grounds.
Yeah, I went to the Yoyogi Animation School because it was like a block down from my apartment on my way home from work. So I took night classes.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Very cool. And Jamie?
I lived in Tokyo, various places in Tokyo, and our manga studio was in, where was it? Oh, in Chiba. So it was a bit of a ride.
Yeah. I was there for 11 years myself. I was in Aichi, Gifu, and Shizuoka prefectures mostly, and I did spend a lot of time in Nagoya. So
nice.
Cool.
So you know how it
cool.
is.
I know how it is. Yes.
Unfortunately, I only know Nagoya as a tourist. That's about it.
But all right, so without further ado, let's get right into it. So, as you all know, topic of the night is a bit of a hot one, if I do say so myself. So we got the artists versus writers. Who puts in more in the market? And
Who wants to start?
yeah,
That's a hard question.
so I'll kick it off with
Okay.
with that initial question. You know, who puts in more work? You know, is it the writers or the artists? This could be in the form of the stories that are put out, whether it's manga, comics. We can go as far as the box office Hollywood. We even talk about the games, but in our creative industry, who puts in more?
Well, as far as comics go, if you don't mind, as far as comics go, I mean, as a writer, I can say that the artists definitely put in more hours. That's without question.
Sure.
But as far as the the overall question about which is more important, well, they're both important. They're two sides of the coin, and one can't really you can't have a comic without one or the other. So both are important in different ways.
Totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, it's a marriage. So at the end of the day, I mean, this discussion, I've heard this from artists, and it's funny that they have a different take, which I obviously don't agree with. Artists would be like, "Oh, artists, it's more important, this and that, and this and this." But like I say, it's a marriage. So, you just can't. I think that's kind of ignorant. Being an artist and a writer on the book, it's kind of ignorant. For them to, take that stance. That's what I think, anyway.
I mean, well, that being said, I mean, we could say it's a marriage all day, but when it comes to the grander social media, it's not uncommon to where you hear a lot of rude postings when it comes to, let's say, an artist about a writer they may have worked with, or even a writer about their experiences with certain artists. I mean,
you definitely
say about that.
Yeah, okay. You're definitely gonna have that thing go on again. I'm dating myself. But I was there. I was around doing the image days or whatever. Doing the heyday and whatever. And those guys it was all about the art, and a lot of people were collecting for the art and whatever. But it comes down, to what a well-written book can stand the test of time. A well-drawn book, not so much. In my opinion. Anyway.
Yeah.
Art is so subjective, though.
Oh well, it is subjective. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. But I'm just saying, we're speaking from a standpoint of, from a commercial standpoint. Mm-hmm. And this is just, again, these are just my findings. I'm not trying to say that everybody else's. This is the end all be all. I've just been, I've been a comic reader and writer or whatever. I've been a comic in American comics for a long time, and I have basically noticed that there are books that I think are drawn really well. They haven't caught the cultural zeitgeist like the books that are either drawn well, are really written well, or the books that are drawn well and written well.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I've noticed that I read too books that are written well, but they aren't necessarily drawn well, and I would rather have one that is drawn okay and written well than one that is drawn really well and written kind of okay.
I concur. That's exactly. That's the point. Yeah.
They're both so important, though.
Well, yeah, they're important because, again, even like a lot of times, it doesn't have to, for a book to be quote unquote drawn well or drawn okay. The person is still able to, the artist, if it's drawn okay, what makes it okay a lot of times is that the person's storytelling is good. The person can capture what it is that the writer is trying to, give us. Right. So, and then there's kind of like a paradigm. So at least, I don't know if it's still a huge paradigm now, but at least back in the 90s, it was a paradigm. You get a book you get 3 pages. If the pages, the first 3 pages are drawn well, then it'll lead you to the next pages, and the next pages better be written well, or the book's gonna die.
Yeah, I mean, you see it everywhere. Flashy art, nice art, well done art. I mean, that's the thing that originally, that's the thing that arrests the attention. That's the thing that draws people in.
Sure.
But the writing is what keeps people coming back.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, it's like you look at a publisher in like the early days of Image Comics. Not everyone, but quite a few people there. It's obvious they were just like, we're going to draw something really flashy to sell a lot of books, but we don't have any plan to continue this because there's nothing to continue because there's nothing really here. It just, it was all sizzle and no steak. And I would agree, Jamie, I would agree very much with your assessment that, I'd rather have something that is, drawn competently and written well than something that looks gorgeous, but, doesn't make any sense or is just like, it's like, why am I reading this? Or, because it's the characters that, for me anyway, it's the characters that keep me coming back.
Sure, absolutely. But my thing is this though too. There are some artists who understand that though too. Understand their place in the marriage. That's the thing. But there are a lot of artists who, don't understand their place in the marriage. And then I think that you can actually, when you go and you do the deep dive, you can understand that that place in the marriage for them was never even important in the first place. When I see certain artists, I've seen artists, I've gone back and looked at scripts and whatnot and seen artists basically, because I'm a top tier artist, there are basically certain parts of that script that don't allow them to aggrandize their particular specialty as an artist. They'll throw the whole part of that script out.
So we have two quick, well, not really questions, but two comments from one of our viewers watching. Marcel Gray, whoever suffers from the most stress is the victor. The writers are creating, the artist makes the writing concrete. But the writer has ongoing anxiety and worrying the artist won't or can't meet the writing expectation or vision.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's a valid. I mean, that point has validity. Obviously, again. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, just gonna say I don't know. I mean, for me, I mean, yeah, I think that the commenter made a very good point. But like for me, like working on the extras, what I do is, I write the script. I give it to Pam first because she basically taught me how to edit. She's been doing comics for so many years, and then we kind of bash it out. Then we hand it to Katie, and she looks at it. And so many times, like I've had this idea of how the page is going to look in my head, and it's like, oh, this is a good idea, and I give it to Katie, and then she breaks it down, and like she doesn't listen to any, sometimes she follows it because she has the same idea, but other times she just has her own idea, and invariably, without any exceptions, I think that her breakdowns are better than the things I saw in my head.
Right, sure.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because that was the next question we were going to ask. Are writers too attached to their work?
Some are.
Yeah, some are. Yeah.
I'm not. I can throw anything out. I can throw anything out the window in an instant if I realize it doesn't work.
Right. I mean, oftentimes I'll catch up with Katie. When I'm working, on Judafist stuff, I'll catch up with Janet Guichi, and I'm like, hey, we got to think about this. Hey, that sucks. Yep. I'm like, oh, okay. Why does it suck? Then they explain to me why it sucks, and I'll go change it. I'm not married. I try to tell, at least with Urban and them, I try to tell them all the time, don't get married to anything. You may like something, but that thing may have to be changed tomorrow, so don't get married to it.
Hey, Ro, as a writer artist, do you ever have fights with yourself?
Okay. Sorry, I had a whole answer prepared for this moment, but I started out as a kid just wanting to write stories. And I believe it was somewhere between 3rd and 5th grade, and I don't remember exactly which year it was. I think it was probably 3rd grade. that the teacher just kind of pulled me aside and said, "Your writing's terrible." And I and I remember thinking like, "Oh, but I'll get better, right?" And I tried like improving what I was writing for that assignment. And I remember bringing it to the teacher after school, and she broke down everything to the point where she was like laughing at the work and saying that like this is not good writing. And so I think it really like, and I was already watching like a lot of animations, reading bunch of my brother's comics and things. And I just thought, well, if I can't write it, then I'll just draw it. And so from there, I started to draw, but with only the intention of making a story, not really so much for like illustration and things. But Half of the Crown is like the nth version or nth attempt at the same story. And if you look at the early attempts that I have, thank goodness most of them are not online. You can tell that I was not in touch with the writing part. I just wanted to be the artist and kind of get my art out there. So before this version came out, I kind of had to admit to myself like my own limitations and what I'd had time for and kind of what my own expertise is. Because like I can read a bunch of books about how to write a good story, listen to all these podcasts and things. But, I think I am more of a artist than a storyteller. Not that like my stories aren't good. Like I believe in my stories. I stand behind them. But it just, from a very young age, I spent most of my time trying to hone like the art part and not the writing part. Sure. So I really did kind of, when it came to that realization, I really did have to then consult like my other creative friends. So there is a writer named Michael McCaskill that he writes the fantasy series called The Choir Files, and he's an excellent fantasy writer. And luckily for me, like a really good friend of mine. And there's also another writer that writes for another webcomic called Aegis Omega, Aegis Omega. And that writer is called Hugo Damas, and it's crazy because English is not his first language, but he's like an amazing writer in English. And so originally, like I would ask them for advice, like, hey, this is my script. What do you think? And just kind of similarly with what Jeff was saying, if they said this part doesn't make sense, and they would give me like options of what I could do. And a lot of them were very respectful and say like, what are you trying to achieve here? Right. And 90% of the time I agreed with them. And so it was really nice. I feel like the story didn't really come together, or the storytelling didn't come together without kind of consulting. Like I don't consult them 24/7. And I, more nowadays it's more me talking to Michael McCaskill. But they live and breathe writing. And they have so much work under their belt, like self-published work that, they have something that I don't. And I think as soon as I admitted that, I felt like my comic got better. Also too, like, the experiences that my characters have, because I have quite a few characters, are different from my experiences sometimes. And I also do have a friend who happens to be like a psychotherapist in Washington State. His name is Christopher Rouse. And I often consult him, like in this situation, what would people normally do? And he usually gives me options, in his experience, people do this, this, and that. And, just looking at it from another perspective like that, it's really valuable for me. So again, like as soon as I admitted that I am not the best writer in the world, for the story that I believe is, the best story that I could come up with, I believe the story got better in that way. Sorry, I know that was long-winded, but I hope that answered your question.
No, that's a great. It's a great answer.
I actually had a question for you, Jeff, and you, Mark. There is a channel called like Cartoonist Kayfabe, and they recently had like a podcast on their last comic symposium. And so they had, I think as an anniversary episode, they had Jim Rugg on there. And
yeah, I know those guys.
Yeah. So another artist, he's like a new budding artist. He's been drawing for like the past year or so, and he's just really kind of improved in the past year or so, and his name is Jerome Cabanatan, and he's a Canadian. And so he asked Jim Rugg, like, as a person who's doing commissions, like, what kind of clients or commissioners like do you seek? Like, what's a good way? And so Jim Rugg had answered, like, one, a client that knows what they want is a good client. Two, a client that knows your work and wants your work is a good client. And three, a client that doesn't know what they want until they see it is the worst client ever. So would you agree that for for an artist that's looking for a writer, that they should have a writer that's kind of similar to the first two?
So when you're looking for a writer, an artist is looking for a writer, you want to be able to match your. This is going to be kind of vague, but I'm going to get to more of a solid piece here. You want to try to match your visions, because vision is what's important, right? So let's say that I'm saying I want a guy with manga style, whatever. What a lot of these young guys don't understand, or young guys don't get, is that there are 1,000 manga styles. Okay, they think it's just this one. No, there's 1,000 manga styles, right? So what really it is that you're looking for, and so like I said, you want to try to match the vision, and you can do that by obviously it's all about communication, for me anyway. So when you talk to this guy, or this woman, or whatever, or whoever you want to tell you're talking to, we talk to this person, you want to be able to show them what you're doing and see what works for them in what you're doing. Because what you said, Ro, the one thing you brought up was that I thought was really good, really strong, was that when you talked about make sure that they're looking for what you're putting out. Because I talk to Irvin and them about this all the time, and this goes back to that one where you talk about the artist, the writer, whoever doesn't know what they want, right? A lot of times, writers will basically feel like any hand works, like the hand of the artist. As long as I'm guiding that hand, I don't care who's drawing it. But that's not the case. You don't want to do that. Okay, you want somebody who has the same vision or close to the same vision as you do, and when you see their work, you can be able to point to, I dig that, I dig that, I dig that. Because you don't want to go into it blind. The writer doesn't want to go into it blind, because that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, if you're getting into a situation like that, I mean, the point is you have to treat it. You do have to kind of treat it almost like you're starting a relationship. It's almost like you have to just like talk and kind of get to know each other, and like start to figure out just cues from each other.
Yep, exactly.
About what you like, what the like vision and value, and like what you're trying to achieve. And I mean, I can tell you right now that any writers out there who have this idea, it's like, well, yes, I'm going to tell the artist what to draw, and they're going to draw it. Well, that's never ever going to happen, because it's always going to differ in some fundamental way from the way you saw it in your head. Sure. And you have to be able to trust the artist that you're working with to, first of all, to, obviously listen to your story and do what's best for the story, but you also have to trust them, and you have to let them, put their spin on it and not micromanage, because that's the whole thing. Because if you let the artist, if you give them creative freedom, they're going to produce the best possible work they can. And like guide them along, but give them freedom too.
And it's like you said, Jeff, they're going to figure out, they're going to solve problems that as a writer, you probably wasn't even thinking about were problems.
Yes. Yeah. And, the way I want to tell this story in one page. This is what happens on this one page. Well, the sequence of panels, the way, the quote unquote camera angles, the way things are portrayed. I mean, a few times it's like I've been really surprised. Katie has done a rough of a page, and I've looked, and it's like the emphasis that she chose, like what she thought was important in the scene, was like totally different than what I thought. Right. And it's just like I'm always like, wow, that's a new way to look at it. I like that, and I've never touched it. I've never tried to like reel her back, because I just have that freedom, have that expression, and it makes it He makes it fun for everybody, hopefully.
Sure, yeah. Right.
So you just
Exactly.
everybody who's working in a creative relationship, just check your egos at the door.
Yep, exactly. I concur.
Speaking of which,
Actually, before you get
Go
into
ahead.
egos, I do want to say these two quick comments. Marcel Gray, so treating writing like Game of Thrones characters, don't get attached.
Right. Don't get married to anything.
Yep. Yep.
And then Beefy Kanoichi, visual clarity and narrative clarity need to be in sync.
Sure, because it's like so Jeff's my editor for Judafist, right? So when I first attacked Judafist, Jeff was like, man, Mark, he says, yeah, this is cool. He said, man, let's get to this guy first. Let's get to this protagonist and get to know this guy and figure out why we want to follow this guy the rest of this story. I was so into the action and all that. I never thought of that. But, it was valid. And I was like, okay, cool, man. I get what you're saying. So on the first page, you get to know why you should follow this guy in the story. And then another Adam and Comfort, I had more characters in the story. And so Adam and Comfort was like, man, maybe you should drop some of these characters. I was like, done, check. So one of the most characters in the story, you don't meet them until probably the sixth chapter. So, I mean, again, listening to Jeff and Adam and Comfort made the story less unwieldy. It made it more manageable. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, each group, everyone has this one thing about comics and manga that I think people don't know that they need to understand. This is a collaborative effort.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if you got to worry. I don't care even if you got to deal with a printer. It's still a collaborative effort. And a lot of people, they don't want to realize they don't want to wrap their mind around the fact that it's a collaborative effort. So
it's really less about like whether the artist is like the best on the planet or whether the writer is the best on the planet,
right,
or whether someone has a tremendously awesome vision or a tremendously awesome idea. It's about whether the writer and the artist can work together.
Yep, exactly.
To make it work. I mean, the relationship is the most important thing.
Right. Yep, exactly.
By far. So, Jamie, we haven't heard from you in a while. What are you thinking?
Yeah, tell us something.
I'm just listening to everyone.
Okay.
Drop that education on us.
Yeah.
Well, in my experience, we didn't have a lot of flexibility in terms of what we were allowed to do creatively. So I definitely had a different experience. So it wasn't so much that we were interpreting Sensei's vision. It was more like he laid it all out and we just had to make it look good, kind of. So it's not really the same as you find like in the American comic collaborations too. It's also why our name isn't on the page.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's also true, because at the end of the day, we could say, it's a collaborative effort on both ends, but somewhere there's a disconnect. Somewhere there's a disconnect to where we have a very large group of loud speakers out here in public media, where it's a thing of, okay, on the artist end, they'll complain about, all right, there are writers that are too attached. They want revisions, like Mark. The artist is almost like a hand of God. Like, you can do whatever. Right. And as long as they can guide that hand, the story will be perfect. Right.
You don't know what you're doing. See, if you just draw it just like this, I'm telling you, if you draw it like this.
There's also the other side of the coin where you have writers that talk about very horrible experiences with artists, or they'll speak of it as if it was just a nightmare where race were just all around the place. There was no consistency. They give them a simple revision, as they would put it, and it's like somebody blew up on them. And the way they talk about these artists is if the artists have a bloated ego. So that's my next question for you all. Are the artists in the creatives nowadays, are their egos bloated? Jamie, let's start with you.
I don't know. I mean, I think this is just going to vary, from person to person. I mean, I said earlier that I would rather have a story that's good than art that is really, really good. But also, when it comes to characters, I tend to get more into and kind of like really, really like characters that are drawn really well. I was thinking about it, and like, I think Mark, you were talking about the early Image comics and stuff like that, right? They had all these great artists back then, but the stories were kind of so-so a lot of the time. And there was a few artists I used to love back then too in the 90s, so I'll date myself as well. I would buy a book just because they drew the art for it, not because I knew anything about the story. And not even
I've been there too. I've been there.
Yeah. I would just be like, oh my God, I love this artist so much that I have to, buy anything that they do. Or like in more cases than not, they did the cover, so I had to have it. And that's all they did.
Oh, the old cover trick.
I mean, so it goes back to saying, like books are really important. Maybe they don't have to be like the best, but they're important in different ways. So I don't know. Maybe there are some artists out there that have kind of overblown egos. To go back to your original question, there a certain artist who I won't name that I followed in the 90s a lot seems to think an awful lot of himself still. 30 years later, he thinks he's like the Biz or something, and I don't know about that.
Hey, look, you and I can trade horror stories on that one.
I don't know that I have horror stories. I don't know this artist
buddy.
in person, but like when I see them online, I'm like, I don't know. You're a little bit full of yourself.
Yeah. There's a lot of guys, they're still acting like this is the 90s. Like, this is not the 90s anymore, sir.
If it works for them, good for them, I guess.
Well, again, the thing though is that I don't know. It's a lot of times, the society. It's just weird because the markets change. 90s was a totally artist market, right? And the 2000s up to now is really a writer's market.
We have all the online comics where it's speed over.
Oh yeah, speed. Oh yeah, definitely.
Art complexity.
It's a reader's market now.
Oh yeah. Thank you, bro. Yeah, it is a reader's
Yes.
market. But it's just because like I said, I can remember this whole diatribe right here being flushed out in Wizard magazine. Again, I'm dating myself. They were right. They're talking about the same thing, and you had these artists like, oh, without us, blah 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 blah. I don't know why these writers are getting paid blah 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 so much. I'm like, well, we tried it your way for 10 years. Didn't work out so well. So now we're trying to write the stuff a little bit better, and it seems like it's working out a lot better. At the end of the day. So a lot of times what I've seen and what I've read, that quote unquote superstar mentality. Look, nothing is this art form is not a monolith. All right. So what was cool 20 years ago may not be cool 10 years ago or tomorrow or whatever, It just comes down to, what, the reader is interested in. Like Rose said, it's a reader's market. At the end of the day, that's the final analysis.
I've noticed that there are a lot more indie comics getting popular than there used to be.
Sure. And I think that's great.
It's like the opposite. I feel like manga has a style that's very indie comic, narrative style that's very indie comic-esque. And the American markets used to be dominated by superheroes with a couple of indies on the side that were hard to get a lot of the time. Now, I think people are more into the other way around, more into the indies than the superheroes, maybe.
Again, it's funny, that superhero stuff is. Hey, I hope you got.
So.
Well, I hope Irvin and them decide to do a talk on that.
Yeah.
We might have to touch on that for sure.
Yeah, because that superhero market, we'll be talking about that. We'll be going back to the 50s and the Whitman report, and comics at one time, comics here in this country used to have a wide plethora, just like in Japan. They had that. But at the end of the day, good old paranoia beat the skins off of that one.
Really quick, two things. New comment from Beefy Kanoichi. I think social media has a way of impacting artists and writers. It really depends on how much algorithms are emotionally currency or validation for them.
Well, yeah.
That makes me that brings up kind of the feeling that I get sometimes. I'm like, I shouldn't have read the comments, like whatever.
Pulp Fiction is the best movie ever. That's a joke. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that was a joke.
Now, before we move on to some of the other stuff, if you're new coming into this stream, don't forget to hit the like button, and share this around. We still have a little bit of time left, a few questions more that we're going to go through, of course. And of course, if you're new, subscribe as well, because we have a lot more on the channel to check out as well. But with that being said, on to the next one.
All right. So we brought up the whole notion of the fans here. And I kind of want to piggyback off that because, like Rose said here, it seems like we've got a reader-based market nowadays, and you'll see that in whether it's comics or manga, where in the comics, the fan in there, they're tired of like some of the same tropes and whatnot, but you still see a lot of that in the manga too, where even though it's got a lot of the hype right now. You got fans that many would say are almost entitled to where they're like, all right, if it's not fitting a certain narrative, what the heck? Why didn't this character do that, or why didn't this happen? This, right? And that could be whether we're talking about the writing portion of it or the artist portion. That being said, here's the question for you. Okay. What do you think the fans are more into? Are the fans more into the art piece, whether it's the manga or the comics, or are they more into the writing piece?
Can I do like a little segue off of that? RE fan interaction with creators, whether artists or writers, please remember that these people they're like real people on the other side.
Sure.
I see it so much. One of my favorite authors even had to deactivate his Twitter for a couple months because people were attacking him over some flaw they saw in his writing that wasn't, they blew it out of proportion. They had reason to be upset, but it wasn't. It made him suicidal, and I kind of get that as somebody who deals with depression also, and a lot of writers and artists do, people's comments can be mean because they forget that there's a real person behind them, so please be nice. Please, if you put something on the internet and you tag an author or use their full name or artist, then be nice. If you're gonna say something critical, which is fine, don't put it in their face. Don't make it as a comment to their webcomic or their post somewhere. Just be nice.
I think for those types of readers that have a lot of, they want a lot of reach or involvement in the creation of the series. I think there's something missing there where they don't ask themselves, is this my comic? Is what I think is happening actually happening? I feel like that kind of process doesn't happen a lot with people who might be new to the internet.
Or they're new. They just don't have no manners.
We like having readers that are involved with the story, but at the end of the day, it's not your story. It's the creator's story, and you can say, well, I'm going to take my readership elsewhere. Well, then that's what you have to do, I guess.
Right.
I mean, the thing
Get
is,
to stepping.
get invested in the story, follow the story. You can like something, hate something, comment on something, but at the end of the day, it's not your story. It's not your thing. So just try to keep that in mind too. The whole trend towards the concept that because I'm a fan of this, I somehow have an ownership stake in this has been kind of strange for me to see.
Well, you know, Jeff, that's like the guy who told me that we fans own Star Wars. I'm like, really? When last time you got a royalty check? I'm like, for real? I know they're
$4 billion franchise.
Yeah,
My
he's like, well, we
goodness.
own it and we have a right to tell them what to do. I was like, I'm gonna tell you this right now, buddy. I said, at the end of the day, this is just the reality of it. In the U.S. comic market, people, the age range of the people with the power is 20 to 40. Okay, and people are like, oh, comics for kids. Comic hasn't been for kids in 25 years, 30 years. Okay, that's just the fact of the matter of the market. And so, you know, and at the end of the day, you know, these people at the ages they are, they should know better. You know, you don't own anything. And I'm not saying that you're, as a fan, we don't appreciate you as a fan, but as creators, writers, artists, or whatever, you know, we're, again, this may sound snooty, but I stand behind this, me personally. We're allowing you guys into our world. That's our world. And if you guys get in there and you like it, that's cool. Let's take this journey together. But, you know, ultimately, don't ever forget that this is our world. I don't care what you're paying for it. You're just paying for access. You're not paying for ownership.
And again, go ahead.
Oh,
no,
okay.
go right ahead.
I agree that it's the creator's world, but you also have to keep in mind who you're writing for, who your audience is. Like, if you're not, I don't know. There are ways that you can connect with the people, and maybe like treat it as like a 95% collaboration a little bit. I'm not saying they should be entitled and demand things, but I mean, I don't see a downside necessarily to at least listening to what people are saying.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
We'll always listen.
Right.
We'll always listen. I mean, you know, criticize away, you know, give suggestions, you know, anything you want. But like you said, you know, just don't be mean about it. And don't think that it's like, you know, I mean, don't think that you can like wrangle control over the comic itself away from the creator, or that you should have the right to.
One of the things that you see though, a lot of times, is that where you have a situation where the creator, you know, may get to the point where, you know, it's triggering, you know, their suicidal tendencies and whatnot, whatever, right? But hey, I've seen creators also let fans have it, and fans can't take it. You know, they'll say something to a creator, and the creator will take and logically give them an argument that totally destroys what came out of their mouths. And then they're just like, oh, you know, he's a mean guy. You know, he's not taking the fans into account. It's like, no, the guy, you said this is what you said. The guy took and logically and methodically broke your viewpoint down, and you can't take it. So it's give and take a lot of times too, you know.
Another thing is that fans.
Well, again, I think that you're right, but what I'm saying is that it's just like any time in life, it's like in life in general. You're gonna catch the wrong guy one day.
So we have a few comments that came in. Beefy Kanoichi, as someone who's an artist and a writer, you'll end up learning very quickly how potentially intense your audience can be, both good or not so good.
Sure.
Yep.
I concur.
Marcel Gray, entitlement. They want to feel validated and hate being told no.
Yeah.
I think Marcel is on to something there.
Noichi, while we're indebted to fans, there's a balance that should be struck.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's why I talk about as balance too. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Right,
There's one more there.
And creating the understanding in the age of the internet is a challenge, though.
It certainly is. I mean, one other thing that I like fans to think about and remember is that you don't have the whole story in your head, because it's in our head instead. So if you see something that you think is logically inconsistent or doesn't make sense, or I mean, maybe we just screwed up. I mean, that's entirely possible that we made a mistake. It's also entirely possible that we're doing something with the story or with this character that you don't quite understand yet, and see how it plays out, and try to figure out, what we're doing, and just trust us. And then at the end, if it totally sucks, then you can say, boy, that totally sucked. And you jumped the shark here, and the whole thing went off the rails in chapter 6, and God, that was awful. But, on the other hand, maybe you'll say, oh, it's a twist ending, or it's that makes sense now. I see what they did. It's a journey. So take the journey with us. Just be patient with us, because we're human.
Sure.
You know what? Actually, I have a question that you actually made me think of something I didn't think about before. Who do you think the responsibility it is to earn their trust when they work together, the artist or the writer? Like, who is it more on?
I think that whoever has the more experience in the biz should take the lead, just because they can offer advice and counsel. So I mean, it just depends on who's been around the block a few more times, I guess.
But one thing too, I find is it's funny because, like, again, I talk to a lot of guys that's been in the biz for a while. I started in the role playing game industry, so I've been in the artistic biz for a while. But comics wise, I just really started to make my push there. But I talked to a lot of guys been in the industry, and sometimes, even Urban and I, we talk about this. I like to admit that, look, at my point where I'm at in the industry, there's some things I don't know. You know what I mean? There's some trends that I'm not a part of. I'm just not a part of it, And so I have to ask Urban and them sometimes, oh, what's up with this trend? What's up with that? Whatever, because they're a part of that trend and I'm not.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If I were to push the envelope a bit, a question to you all then is, should they listen? Because this is the market, whether we like it or not. It's it's evolved to this state, however you want to put it. These are readers that are reading your content, that are buying your works. Should they listen? Is then the question.
Well, the thing is, I mean, this has always been the same question, because the question is, are you doing your comic for yourself and you're sharing it with others? Are you doing it for commercial purposes, and you have to do exactly what the audience wants to, because you're chasing them, because you're doing something that's very commercial? And I mean,
exactly.
Jamie, with your situation and your professional experience is much different than, say, Rose or Mark's or my own.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah.
I think it depends on who you're answering to, too. In general, who are you answering to? Are you answering to somebody who owns the property, like you're writing a Disney?
Right.
Are you answering to fans because you want to make a living off of it? Or are you doing it purely for your own self-gratification? All totally valid, great ways to make comics, but very different ways of going about it.
Sure, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that a lot of the times, but one of the issues come down to that sometimes people don't have any idea why they're making that comic.
Right. But I mean, as far as like the ultimate listening to the fan, I mean, if you're doing, I've seen a trend recently, which is kind of interesting. It's like people are actually doing choose your own adventure comics, where they will solicit fan feedback, and then whatever the fans say is what happens in the next page or the next chapter. And that's a very interesting way of collaborating directly with the fans. But unless you're doing that, and also there's also the very real problem that can occur. It's like, if someone writes in a comment and they say, this character should do this or that, and you say, that's a great idea, and then you actually do it, well, then there might be a legal issue, because you stole my idea.
Exactly.
Wasn't a Homestuck done that way, where like all the fans voted or something every week, and that became the next part of the story?
Quite possibly. I mean, I know the only webcomic I know that actually does a lot of participation like that is Questionable Content. One of the kings of webcomics, and Jeff Jock will he'll post a poll every few weeks. It's like, this is bonus art. What do you want to see? Or, what's going to happen? And then the Patreon people vote on it and he'll do it. And that's kind of cool. But of course, he maintains control of the main storyline, and that's all up to him. So yeah, those are some interesting ways to think about for interacting with the fans in a way that allows them to be happy because they're controlling something, and it also allows you to be happy because you can still do your own thing. But again, be very wary of like just taking taking fan advice, because there's going to be the person who pops up and says, you stole my idea, now I'm going to ruin your life.
Right, and it's valid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't even think of that as a possibility, so I'm really glad that you brought that up.
Yeah. I mean, let's put it this way: it's not likely. And the thing is, it's hard to go into a court of law and say you stole my idea, because it's an idea.
Sure,
it's not
exactly.
it's not a concrete thing, right?
Right, but don't think they're not going to be able to find a lawyer to take the case.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, if their case is stupid, you're going to stress out for months, and it's going to be just a really bad scene. So
sure,
potentially, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then, to extend off that one, because the audience is what it is, and they like what they like, of course. Would you? Does the consideration come in that there may be a lack of ability, or that the writers or artists in question are listening to the online media maybe too much, or too conscious about it? Because it's not uncommon that we have individuals all darn near committing career suicide, where they'll comment on social media posts, complaining about their readers, complaining about maybe a writer they're working with, or complaining about an artist that they're working with.
I think that's unprofessional. Not so much as talking about the readership. That's bad enough. But when you get on here and you start complaining about your coworkers, yes, that is career suicide, or it's probably going to be one, or the powers that be may hop online and give you a tongue lashing right there in front of the rest of the fans. We've seen that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, yeah, you shouldn't be bad mouthing your coworkers. That's not cool.
I'm curious what the rest of you think, though, because this is a common thing nonetheless.
People are stupid.
Yeah, that they are.
I would need to know. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, just that we all do stupid stuff. Anyone can.
Hey, Jeff, I think I sent you that particular thing we're talking about. I think I sent you the transcript on that. A couple weeks ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That was a rough
one. I've been personally lucky myself. I mean, I've just, mainly I've always vetted the people that I work with really, really carefully, and made sure that I can work with them before I work with them. So we haven't had much problems like that. But I don't know. I don't. In some ways, it's like, the stress can get to you, and you can pop off, and you can say things that you regret. And I think, unfortunately, with the internet culture, it's like, if you have that moment of weakness and you say something that you feel bad about, it's like you can never erase it then. And
right.
It's always going to live, and it's always going to be in some message board somewhere, and it's going to fester and fester, and then it'll pop back up in 5 years or 10 years, and it's, what can you do?
Right.
So as a professional, then, should you always back up? Let's say you're working on a collaborative story. Should you always back up? Whoever your teammates are basically on that project. So let's say you don't necessarily agree with the writing direction. Should you just, if people ask you, should you just kind of pass it off, or should you just, should you be honest?
Well, it depends on who you're being honest to, I guess.
Right.
If you're,
Yeah, exactly.
You don't air your dirty laundry in public.
Right.
But if you have like a circle of friends who also, and you have friends in common, then you can all talk about it, and maybe it'll get back to them that way, and then you can kind of like work it out behind the scenes.
Right.
But yeah, never ever air it in public.
Mm-hmm. Because ultimately what you're doing is that you are contributing to the WWE SmackDown culture.
Yep.
Does this come down to it depending on whether or not the project in question is a passion project or a project for strictly the money?
Still got to be professional though, regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying the energy that's on the table seems to be different from what I hear here, depending on which one. If it's a passion project, okay, communicating with your friends, or communicating, it's out of the sense of.
Well, if it's for the money, if it's for the money, then basically what you're into is you're into office politics, because what you're doing is you're basically doing an office job where you draw pictures or you write scripts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, it can be both still.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You can be passionate about your office job.
Sure. Well, at the end of the day, I just err on the side of professionalism. I use the same professionalism for when I work by myself than I do when I'm working for Palladium Books or whoever heck else I'm working for. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and read these last few comments, and then we can go ahead and kind of segue into our final part of the discussion. So these last few questions, actually, this one right here. Beefy Kanoichi, career suicide usually stems from not being media trained. It's important to understand who's paying you and why you should use that to empower to sit down and do the work.
Mm-hmm. Empower you.
Read the room.
Mm-hmm.
People forget that we are humans and we're still animals. Just instead, we can talk and know the power of our words. People suck dogs are better.
Yeah.
If only you could train dogs to do art. They would do it for milk bones. It'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
I would
Milk
totally
bones
draw
and
just to
pats in
make
the
my cats happy.
Right, right. Hey, yeah, that's a good thing right there, Jamie.
Yeah.
But in any human endeavor, you're going to have politics.
Yeah.
I would never work with a cat. They just lay on your tablet all day, and because it's warm.
And I love cats myself, but then they'll be smacking you in the face with their tail too. Don't forget that part.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
So,
rolling into the final one. All right. Is
this must be heavy.
not as much as you think. Not as much as you think.
Nico's like, can I say this on the air?
Yeah.
Find out on the next episode of Dragon Ball Z.
So a lot of the argument is that it also stems with overinflated prices in the creative industry as well, or at least some would claim that for starting projects, prices are overinflated, or for prices of those, let's say it's commissions or a small work or even an anthology of sorts, that they're unfair, right? I would then ask you, then, is that true? And what does more to actually sell the book? Is it?
When you mean prices, you mean the actual price of the book, or you mean the rates that the actual creators charge?
This is both, because in the creatives industry, you can't take out commissions. You can't take out stencil portrait commissions. You can't take out the 6-page anthologies. You can't separate them from a 60-page story that somebody wants to do a project on. This is all in the same community, and everybody stars all trying to do one or the other, or they may deviate into one or the other. That being said, you have the same argument regardless of which.
I mean, I will always, no matter what you pay artists or writers, I'll almost always say they're still underpaid. I mean, really, when you consider, the amount of hours that go into it, and you break it down, by an hourly schedule, it's
sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of traps in there too, because like I tend to look at it from like underground, like hip hop standpoint, right? Because when you first start out in hip hop, you're battling people, doing all that, whatever. But once you get that first single out, you know, you got a reputation at that point, so you ain't gonna be out here battling willy nilly in the street like you would, you know, otherwise, because you got a reputation. And as you even get bigger, like Kanye, Kanye, I don't care if he can rhyme or not, he's not gonna be battling the guy on the street corner. It's not gonna happen. So from an art standpoint, a lot of times experience tends to be the rubric here, right? So you know, you got a guy, you know, and I run into these guys all the time. This guy, I don't care how good he is, you know, or she is, you know, or they are, you know, they don't have their experience. Sometimes they just don't have the experience, so we don't know how they're going to react when you put them in the pressure cooker. Right? They can be the best, prettiest artists on earth, but I've seen them fall apart multiple times. So experience is the rubric. If I got 1 year experience and I come to you like, well, I'm going to charge $90 a page. I'm like, hold up, player. You know, you don't want to be charged no $90 a page. And anybody giving you $90 a page is setting you up for failure. But then you got 3-4 years, you got some good pages under your belt, then you can go raise your rate. But it's all, to me, again, it's all about experience. And a lot of times, I don't think people take that into account.
Yep.
What do you guys think, Jamie, Ro?
You can go first, Jamie.
Okay. Already the retail prices of stuff, I mean, it sucks from a consumer standpoint, but it is what it is. It's expensive to get things made now. Like, shipping is expensive, printing is expensive, paper is expensive, the labor involved in making books is expensive. It's not all automated either. So, like, and we're getting them cheap because they're being made in China or whatever too, which is, you know, exploitative, and we're benefiting from that. So, like,
exactly.
It sucks that it costs $20, $25 for, like, you know, like 50-page book or something, but we can't do anything about it, you know. I mean, and you know, if you can't afford that, go to your library. I've checked out so many comics from my library online. Never even had to go. You just download it to your tablet and have it for a couple weeks. Great. There are, you know, online comics for free everywhere. Yep. And of course, Ro, you do webtoons. I mean, go to webtoons and then read some stuff for free if that's, you know.
Go to Comic Fury. I gotta plug Comic Fury.
Yeah, we gotta plug them. Those are our dudes.
Like, a lot of the time, it's cheaper if you get even, you know, a big 5 comic. Sorry, I'm thinking publisher terms. You know, if you get a big 3 comic, like, online, digitally, it's cheaper than buying the paper one. So.
Right.
See, the thing with comics, though, comics is a mom and pop industry. People forget that.
Yeah, it's not that big.
Right. So, you know,
it's like putting together the print editions of the extras. It's like, you know, you have to look at the print costs, you look at the unit cost, and then, you know, you put the cover price at a level that you can offer a discount to bookstores and things like that, but still, you know, make something at it. I mean, and we're lucky because our book is in black and white, and we've been able to put out, like, volume 2 is coming out within the next few days, and
nice.
Yay! And we're offering, it's an 82-page book for $9.95, you know, and it's printed well. And I mean, you know, the unit cost is a little bit higher, but the thing is, I'm sticking to that because I want to have that under $10 cover price.
Right, exactly.
You know, it's a good entry. So I mean, it's possible, but I mean, you gotta kind of squeeze and cut and do the best you can with it.
I don't think people realize how many middlemen are involved in here.
Sure.
Too.
Right.
Like, you got the booksellers, the people in the warehouse, the delivery company who pay people also, and the printing companies, and then the artists and writers and letters or whoever that works on it. Like, they're getting
Ro, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I realized, especially very recently, and you know, my friends Rick and David, I've talked about this with them. They draw comics themselves. David Grom is the artist for the Metal Witch sketchbook project. He draws the Next Panel Press, and he's done some things in that fan image zine, that Image Grand Design. And so has Rick, and Rick does the indie comic called The Power. But I probably talk to their ears off like almost every day about how I know that I'm missing that part, like the business part. And so I think up until now, I have just really did the business model, if you could call it a business model. If I'm going to put it out there and if people like it, then they'll see it. But that's not true. Now, is it? So I need to learn how to, I guess, market myself, make, Rick and David have been trying to really, I don't want to use the word pressure, but just like strongly suggest that I make a hard copy of Half of the Crown. And so for me, when I created Half of the Crown, I specifically chose the webtoon format so it would stay free, because I wanted it to reach as many readers as it could. But, maybe changing it into a tangible form will just kind of give it that boost, or recognition.
It's funny though, because what we found is kind of weird because, I tend to follow Jeff a lot of times, right? So we have a hybrid way of we take the webcomic, and after we get enough to put it in a trade paperback or graphic novel type format, we'll put it out in the hard copy.
Yeah.
And we find that gives a reader a whole different experience, reading the whole thing in a chunk like that, right? So, and then people are like, oh man, wow, I checked it out as a webcomic, but oh dang, I got it here right now. This is totally different. So
would you say that then like the comic fluency changes once it's in kind of a tangible?
Right, because the thing is this though, my thing about webtoons, why I really don't go there, I didn't decide to do Judafist there because the cutting up of the pages, I wasn't doing that because I wanted the experience to be like, but so where you can actually read the comics. On what we do, we are on Comic Fury. And Comic Fury, it goes to scroll down and stuff for the web, but it's still the page. You don't have to put it in one single piece or whatever, right? So that's why that works for us. So
and part of this is because we're old men, and we still
that's definitely a part.
So,
yes, it is. Yes, it is. You got to put that in there.
But I mean, I love webcomics are great because in the old days the problem with getting your work out there was always that you have to find a publisher, and if you didn't find a publisher, then you had to go to Kinko's at 3 a.m. and make zines and staple them yourself.
Those days, they were great days.
And they were great days, but the thing is now it's like literally anybody can publish their comic for free on the web, and that's fantastic because it's like all these people have this creative outlet. But the problem is, before it was getting your message in a bottle into the sea, and now you go to the sea and there's 100 million bottles out there, and it's finding your bottle, getting your bottle noticed. That's really the problem because, even on Comic Fury is still, it's fairly small compared to webtoons. But the thing is, there's so much content out there,
you got that right.
And it's like trying to find something and trying to connect with something. It's just like, getting seen and is the really hard part today. It's totally,
sure.
For people like Mark and me, we've had to learn a lot of new tricks.
Right.
So.
And still learning a lot of new tricks.
Yes. Yep.
Wow.
All right. Don't want to keep too much more of your time here, though, as the end of our show.
Well, actually, before we close, I do want to say, if you guys want to go ahead and plug yourselves, that way anybody, checking out, they can go ahead and make sure to check you out. Of course, for the most part, everybody has been on Shining Spotlight. Mark will be on Shining Spotlight one day,
When they catch me.
But everybody's been on Shining Spotlight on here. But who wants to go first? I guess we can start with, we'll start with Jeff.
Okay. Let's see. Read the extras. Oh, you got a graphic there. Fantastic. The extras is on Comic Fury. Let's see. www.theextras.thecomicseries.com. Check it out. New page every Friday. And
right.
two books available on, let's see, Coffee. So.
Okay. And Jamie?
Follow me on my social media, Jamie Lynn Leno. It's just my name, easy to find. Twitter or Instagram is probably best just to see what I'm working on now. So,
Yep. Check out Jamie's stuff.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Can't get my book anymore.
And
I took
then
it out of print.
It's out of print.
Yeah, it's out of print.
I'm hurting. I'm
There
hurting.
were some Chinese Prince of Tennis fans that were not very nice.
Oh
And
no.
some of the things I wrote about to attack some of the people in the book. So since
Boy,
it's
I wish you would have known us.
It's an autobiographical story, so they were not very nice. So I took it out of print.
Jamie, I wish you'd have known us back then.
You
Actually,
You wouldn't have had
Actually,
that problem.
Fine. I told my
Did-
story. I'm good. Next chapter now.
I was going
You
to say, if
did-
you want to put it back in print, talk to us. We may have some strategies. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
good for that.
Yeah,
It's
moving
nothing-
on.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
okay. And next, Ro.
Please read or check out my webtoon on Webtoon Canvas. It's called Half of the Crown. On all of the socials, you can find me if you just put in Ro Higashi. I believe I'm probably the only Ro Higashi on all of the platforms except for Facebook. There is one other one, but there can only be one. No. And what's not on there is my kid forced me to start a TikTok, so I'm also on TikTok.
These kids, it's nuts. Yeah, I'm. You can actually read Judah Fist at JudahFistTheComicSeries.com. It's actually a comic free format. I just finished the first chapter, so go ahead and check it out. And I really need. I like feedback, and so I will definitely respond. So
Yes.
that's again.
Nice feedback.
Yeah.
And Mark is very, very humble, so make sure you go ahead and give him his due, because I definitely have to say that about Mark. But
I'm for the team. I want to see the team do well. I'll get mine later.
all right, and if, of course, if you guys like this video, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe as well. The next thing that we have coming up, what's the next topic, Nico? After this,
you guys will get the promotion heads up on it. But next time we'll be getting more into the a bit of the cosplay side of things.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, so
I can't wait to see that one.
Yeah. Who do you have coming on?
We're talking about cosplay as it pertains to the creators in the industry. So be ready for that one, folks.
Hey,
I'm out for it next month.
Yeah, no, and I hope you guys like this too. I really do, because we're trying something a little bit different on the channel. So, obviously give us your feedback or, your guys' thoughts or whatever if you guys like this.
Hey, look.
Shining Spotlight will be back in around like May, June-ish. And then also we'll be having updates on a couple comics that we have coming out and a big showcase that we have coming out during the summer. So
Very proud of them. I'm extremely proud of them.
In any case, thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys later.
Bye, everyone. Good night.